Qabalah, Session 1. The word Qabalah derives from the Egyptian word Qab, meaning body, and the Arabic word Allah, name of God. Thus, combining these terms, Qabalah means the body of God. The real meaning of this is recommunion of the kingdom and the crown, the bride of God and the Lord God, the body and the mind, etc. Here we see the Kabbalistic Tree of Life diagram as it was modeled by MacGregor Mathers and his early 20th century group, the Golden Dawn, who were committed to the study of Qabalah. We see in their model the modern arrangement of the 10 Sephiroth spheres and the 22 paths marked as tarot cards. This is the most familiar arrangement known now, but it is only the latest of 3 versions of this diagram. Prior to the Golden Dawn, the Tree of Life diagram was shaped in this arrangement, designed by Isaac Luria, the blind prophet of the Sephardic era. Some say it was during this era, when the Zohar was first written down, that the Tree of Life model originated. However, before the RE arrangement was ascertained for the diagram from Luria's interpretation of the Zohar, the previous interpretation of the diagram kept, related to the oral tradition of the Zohar, was this, the Gra arrangement, reportedly designed originally by Rebbe Shimon Bar Yochai from the same era as the Behir. As we now see, over time the Sephiroth on the middle pillar have slipped further and further down. This process has long been recognized by Kabbalists as the breaking of the vessels, where the term vessels is kelepot, which literally translates as shells. However, the middle way of Qabalah is the path of recapitulation, and so we wind back the clock to find the original meaning for the slippage of the middle pillar Sephiroth and the shattering of the shells. The original model of Qabalah was 2 cubes. One was above, and so the other was below. When viewed at a 45-degree angle from above the joining in the middle of the upper and lower cube's corners, the Tree of Life diagram is seen, with its 10 points as corners and its 22 paths as edges. The descent of the central pillar's Sephiroth symbolizes the implosion of the twin cubes above and below of Qabalah to form a model something like this, a hypercube, or one cube nested inside another. This 2D image depicts a 3D model of a 4D shape. This 4D shape has some special qualities, namely that the inner cube and the outer cube have the same volume as one another. When rotated to a 45-degree angle, the hypercube looks like this, a tesseract. And just as the nested hypercube is a 4-space shape, the tesseract or hypercube at antipode represents the 4th dimension beyond 3-space, the invisible direction of time. Here is where we begin our analysis of Qabalah as it looked prior to the creation by God of this universe. Measured within the impossible octagram in the center of the tesseract, we find this model depicting an overlapping cluster of 10 spheres shown in blue, 7 in green, and 3 in red. The 10 spheres in blue represent the 10 Sephiroth, originally called 10 emanations of nothingness in the Sefer Yetzirah. The 7 in green represent the 7 Olympic dignities, the so-called planetary cameo. The 3 red spheres represent the upper 3 worlds of Qabalah, but more importantly are formed from a twisted orbit seen from the side of the 12 signs of the zodiac. Here we see the 10 Sephiroth in black, the 7 planets in green, and the 12 signs in 3 loops in red. The surrounding squares are derived from the geometry of the interior of the tesseract. In this we see only the spheres. The outermost of these are shown in blue, the 10 Sephiroth of nothingness, wherein the Hebrew word for nothingness is Ayin. With these 10 Sephiroth are the 7 Olympic dignities or planets, shown here in red, and within them are the 12 signs of the zodiac, shown here in black. The 7 planets are in the realm of Ein Sof, meaning limitless nothingness, and the 12 signs of the zodiac are in the realm of Ein Sof Or, meaning bright, limitless nothingness. The first of these models we will examine apart from the others will be the 10 Sephiroth of nothingness in the outermost layer called Ayin, or nothingness. Here we see the spheres of the Sephiroth only, and the paths of the Tree of Life, the edges of the cube of Qabalah, are represented here as only dots where these 10 spheres intersect. Subtracting Ayin, or nothingness, from the complete model of all the spheres overlapping, we are left with the 7 planets, here in red, and the 12 signs of the zodiac, shown here in black and, as before, arranged in a circle rather than along a 3-looped edge. Because the grouping of traits by these sums is prehistorically ancient, many names for each have been given throughout time. Here we see the labels of these names, color-coded as in the last diagram, arranged by 10 aeons of 2,000 years each, beginning at the bottom in 18,000 BC and concluding at the top in 4000 AD. Knowing these labels will enable you to understand the meanings of the corresponding names over time. The next layer beyond the Kabbalistic 4 worlds model, which we will discuss in the next session, includes the 7 planets of Ein Sof, limitless nothingness. To comprehend limitless nothingness, we would need a measuring device that would needfully fall far short of estimating the true depth. To this end, we find the ancients applied the 7 classically known planets of antiquity. Subtracting that layer from our model, all we are left with are the 12 signs of the zodiac, occupying the layer of Ein Sof Or bright limitless nothingness, sometimes also called the primary clear light, associated with Yelem, the Buddhist concept of that which preceded the beginning of all being. We see here Aries is labeled at the top, Cancer to the right, Libra most below, and Capricorn to the left. This model can be read around clockwise or counterclockwise, depending on how it is meant to be used as a measure. The Kabbalistic attributes of the 12 signs of the zodiac include the 12 sons of Jacob who became the 12 tribes of Israel, as well as the 12 apostles of Christ the Messiah. However, later, Gnostic attributes were also assigned to the zodiac signs and 7 planets. The Gnostic rendition of the 12 zodiac signs of Ein Sof was as the 12 archons, or authorities. They understood the 7 planets as 7 powers of these archons, occurring along bars between the archons when they are arranged as a circle like the zodiac itself. The Gnostic myth of the archons is that each rules a span of 2,000 years, an aeon, and that they are 12 shards of a single shell that shattered when it fell from heaven. They call this original shell Yaldabaoth, or Samael, meaning the blind. The myth is that Yaldabaoth, the demiurge, created the 4 worlds of Qabalah, and was the father with mortal Eve of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh and Elohim, the twin gods over good and evil. In the next session we will discuss the 4 worlds of Qabalah, and in the 3rd session discuss the Kabbalistic Tree of Life as it appeared to Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Qabalah Session 2. In this session, we will look at the four worlds model of Qabalah. According to this model, the emanations of nothingness, we covered in session 1, comprise 3 layers of decreasing luminescence away from the lower 3 worlds. The uppermost world, Absolute, is comprised of these 3 layers: Ayin Sof Ar, Ayin Sof, and Ayin. The model we see here for the 4 worlds depicts their order prior to the fall of spirit into matter, i.e. the creation of our universe by the Gnostic demiurge. Here, immediately below and within Absolute, the world of emanation, is Yetzirah, the world of formation, which contains the cubical model of the tree of life discussed initially. Beneath and contained inside the world of Yetzirah, formation, is the world of Bariah, representing the creation of our universe, which in turn has represented itself as the innermost sphere, labeled by the 7 days, representing the world of Asai, the realm of action. According to the cosmology of Kabbalistical myths, our universe was created when the world of Yetzirah and the world of Bariah exchanged places. The tree of life passed downward through the realm of Bariah, causing our creation to take place. At the same time, the realm of Bariah was removed upward away from our own place in the realm of matter and world of Asaya, or action. It is described in the Bereshit Beth of the Zohar that the world of Bariah contained the paradise of Eden, and that the tree of life of Yetzirah, the formation, was placed into its center. This scroll will depict the 4 worlds inside Bariah, described in the Zohar, and just as we find that the tree of life descended into the lowest realms of Bariah, of Eden, so too we can see in each of the 4 inner worlds of Bariah 5 Sephiroth emanations, and another one on the border between each. Following Qabalah as a path of recapitulation or recommunion of the present body with the mind of the past, we will begin in the lowest of the inner worlds of Bariah and work upward, approaching the highest Sephiroth on the outermost layer of Bariah, penetrating into the world of Yetzirah above, and called thus the Holy of Holies. The description of the 4 inner realms of Bariah, or of paradise, comes from the Zohar, and the numbers below each Sephiroth indicate the verse within the Bereshit Beth volume of Zohar. The Bereshit Beth volume of the Zohar describes the ascent of the dead from the moment the soul leaves its earthly vessel of flesh. Thus, in the lowest of the 4 worlds of Bariah, the souls of the righteous are grouped according to their worthy deeds. Their deeds are then measured on a column called Zer and Pin, meaning literally the short face. In the next higher inner realm of the world of Bariah, or paradise, we find the emanations representing angels, each of which acts as a guide to the group of souls gathered into the places of the same emanations in the inner world below. This level of the inner spheres of Bariah is the same as the lower earth discussed in Genesis, wherein it is written, "He made the upper waters apart from the lower waters." The upper waters of Bariah are ruled over by 6 archangels: Michael, Adria, Gadrahale, Adahinale, Ahinale, and the angel of all converts, he who now guards the way into Eden, blocking it to the children of Adam with an eternally spinning fiery sword. In the fourth world of Bariah, that is the sphere of Bariah encompassing the upper and lower worlds of creation, and the realm of paradise on earth, the Garden of Eden, we find the Sephiroth represented as 5 rays of refracted light from the Holy of Holies on the outermost border above, connecting to Yetzirah through the Moonstone or Sapphire on the border between the realm of Bariah and the upper waters. It is said the throne of God is like sapphire, that the tablet of the law was engraved on a sapphire stone, and that it was a sapphire stone that was given to Adam by Raziel following the exile. The outer 2 columns of Sephiroth permeating the Zohar's 4 inner worlds model for Bariah are named Abba, meaning father, for the column on the left, and Ima, meaning mother, for the column on the right. It is thus through the middle pillar, the Yetzirah, as light shining from the Holy of Holies through the sapphire moonstone that separated the upper waters from the lower waters, was brought down to earth and placed within the Garden of Eden in the form of the Tree of Life of Qabalah. The Gra, or earliest known version of the Tree of Life diagram, represents the 10 Sephiroth as corners and the 22 paths as edges on a cube above over a cube below, representing 1 cube over time or a 4D hypercube. However, this is only one form of hyperspatial object. Just as there are 5 regular platonic solids in 3 dimensions, so too do each of them correspond to a similar shape in 4 space, 1 dimension above. The hyperspace cube is the Tree of Life, and likewise the hyperspace tetrahedron is the Tree of Knowledge, which later became the Tree of Death following the expulsion from paradise. When the Gra Tree of Life diagram is recombined with the Tree of Death diagram, the result is the recapitulation in a single model of the systems described by both. Thus, what we see here is nothing less than the hyperspatial geometry of the Kabbalistic Tree of Yetzirah, bearing upon it the hypertetrahedronal seed fruit of life itself. Although this form may be immortal, our own DNA is not. Just so the first self-sustaining form of life on planet Earth was the virus, whose DNA is packaged inside a hexagonal isosahedron at its head, and after which our own central nervous system's arrangement is modeled. Qabalah, Session 3. In the first session we discussed the emanations of nothingness in the realm of Absoluth. In the second session we discussed the fall of these emanations through the realm of Yetzirah into the realm of Bariah, or Eden, paradise on earth. In this session we will discuss the Tree of Knowledge in the Garden of Eden and its role relative to the fall of man. To begin with, we see in this depiction 4 diagrams, all depicting the forbidden fruit on the Tree of Knowledge. From left to right we begin with the seed inside the fruit, then the fruit itself, next the fruit without its skin, and finally the fruit split in half. First we will examine the seed inside the fruit, depicted as a 2-dimensional square, the the shadow of a three-dimensional tetrahedron. Here we see a tetrahedron dissected into the now familiar 10 Sephiroth emanations. The 3 corner points and the node in the middle correspond to the tetrahedron's 4 points and 4 sides. The 6 other points along the lines between these represent the 6 edges of the tetrahedron. This arrangement of the 10 attributes is as a tetractys, to be read chronologically from top to bottom. This tetractys represents the seed of the tree of knowledge, which is foresight, and so in this diagram we see, just as Eve did, the first of the generations to follow Adam and Eve. This diagram likewise depicts the fruit of the tree of knowledge itself. Here we see the generations that followed Adam and Eve split into 2 lineages, the house of Seth and the house of Cain. Cain's line proceeds upward and represents the sons of God, who came down and bred with the daughters of men, that is, those who descended from Seth, following the line downward and below. So we see 6 generations of immortals cohabited with 8 generations of mortals. Just as Enos was the son of Seth, and Lamech the name of the 8th mortal born, so too was Enoch the son of Cain, and Lamech the name given to the 6th generation of immortals. Between these two, the names reverse direction relative to one another in the manner shown. Here we see the fruit of the tree of knowledge schematically exploded to show separately its seeds on the left, its stem and skin in the middle, and its volume as a shadow on the right. The seed on the leftmost is Eve, perceives the volume of the shadow cast by the stem and skin. The seed inside the fruit of knowledge Eve swallowed gave her foresight and showed her that the division between her 2 sons in their first generation would last at least until the life of Lamech, 6 generations of immortals, or 8 mortal generations later. Thus here we see the fruit of knowledge schematically re-imploded, forming a cross-section or half of the fruit itself. We can see here the manner in which the poison entered the fruit. The 3 layers of its skin, the realm of Absoluth, were penetrated by the fang of the serpent, the Sephiroth, to the core of the fruit, the realm of Yetzirah, and into the seeds in the innermost world of Barai. From there the poison leaked downward throughout the rest of the lower realm of the fruit, the world of action, the world called Asaya. When Eve ate from this fruit, she swallowed its poison seed. According to myths, it was in that moment, when the serpent of Satan tricked Eve into eating the forbidden fruit of paradise, that Samael, the demiurge and creator of the 4 worlds of Qabalah, declared himself equal to the immeasurable imperishable realms, the Gnostic phrase for the all-seeing Empyrean God, the concept now of all or the Most High. This was the moment of the shattering of the vessels, the fall of Satan, his angels, and mankind, all at the same time. Following Eve eating of the forbidden fruit of Eden, she then fed the fruit to Adam. However, before this they copulated, and thus when Adam ate the fruit himself, Eve was already pregnant with Cain. Following Adam eating the fruit, he and Eve came together again and conceived Abel. Thus Cain was born with Eve's immortality, and Abel was born with immortality and foreknowledge. To follow this second generation of offspring to Adam and Eve, we first turn our attention to this model for the Tree of Death by Steve Savedow. Here we are seeing an exploded stalactahedron, or, as discussed in Session 2, a hypertetrahedron, with one square or shadow of a tetrahedron above and another below. This simpler form of the same concept as the tree of knowledge diagram of a Qabalah represents a tree of death now, because for Adam or any of his generations to eat once more of the tree of life after the expulsion would cause them to surely die. Thus, this diagram depicts the fruit of the tree of life as opposed to the previous diagram for the fruit of the tree of knowledge, the forbidden fruit in Eden. Thus, this shape is only a more complex form of the same model as we saw earlier representing the fruit eaten by Eve. However, this fruit is that which can no longer be intellectually apprehended by the generations of mankind. It cannot be grasped, because to understand it is to pluck it and to taste of it, to have gnosis or experiential knowledge of it. It is simply grown on too tall a tree to be reached now. Therefore, ponder this model at your own risk. At the core of this fruit, though, is this model, which represents a method of time travel based on the right understanding of space as moving in one direction and time as moving in an opposite direction to this. This understanding should be considered extremely dangerous because, according to the myths of Qabalah, the city of Enoch, from whence Noah hailed, was sunk to the bottom of the sea by the flood due to the immoral use by its inhabitants of technology taught to them by their gods. Again, we turn our attention to the model of the 10 Sephiroth as circular emanations and the 22 paths on the usual tree of life expressed as the points of intersection between them. Here we see also the 10th Sephiroth circle encompasses the space of all the others, forming a torus around the 7th central Sephiroth. This model also reiterates the 10 attributes of the tetrahedral tetractys model of the seeds given earlier. The seeds and the fruit of the tree of knowledge are the 10 Sephiroth emanations. Next, we review the model of the 7 planets, the so-called interior 7 attributes below the so-called tables of the 8th and the 9th of Hermes Trismegistus. Just as the 10 Sephiroth emanations are the seeds of the tree of knowledge, so too are the 7 Kamea, the seeds of the tree of life. The 10 Sephiroth are yielded by looking at a torus, or a hypersphere, from above its pole. The 7 planetary dignities are shown here as along the edge or side of the hypersphere, as viewed from above its equator. Now we see the whole book of Raziel written by Adam in paradise, describing all he saw and knew there, lost at the time of the expulsion, and returned to Adam by the angel following Adam's prolonged repentance in the river Gihon. The 10 emanations are the central tetractys, including one emanation that is a zodiac of 12 aeons. Above this are the Father God and Mother Goddess, and below are the 4 inner worlds of Beriah, superimposed above the 7 latitudes on the globe of Asai. Thus, just so did the fall occur. In one and the same instant did Samael the blind declare himself equal to God, did Satan enter unto the serpent, and the serpent did tempt Eve. It was the tears of Eve in Eden that brought about the flood. So here we see the 3rd level or dimension of the fall, following Eve's temptation of Adam, when God spoke unto Samael and said, "You err." After God had spoken thus to Satan, God entered into Eden to cast out original sin. He entered into Eden through the tree of knowledge, whose seeds are the 10 Sephiroth. Here is the tree of knowledge diagram which depicts the hypercube of time we call Qabalah. It is written Adam and Eve, having recognized their nakedness, concealed themselves with fig leaves, and thus disguised themselves as trees. So when God came down to Eden on earth, he came down in the form of the tree of knowledge. He then cursed the sinners involved in original sin. This is the sevenfold curse, known as the mark of Cain, which is the taking back of 7 blessings. The blessings are seen here to be the unfolded left and right columns on either side of the foreshortened central column of the tree of knowledge. The central column is the compression into one of the 4 Sephirot Malkuth, Yesod, Tifereth, and Kether. The Sephirot here are labeled according to the 4 prime trigrams of the I Ching. Yin, positive, is leftmost, signifying Binah, while Yang, negative, is rightmost, signifying Chakma. In the middle is Tao, signifying the middle way, or the Buddhist Eightfold Path. The manner God cursed the sinners was to remove, one by one, each of these 7 blessings. First he retracted the gift of communication given to the serpent, and made its shape alike the Tao, the path itself, to mimic its circumspection of speaking with a forked tongue. Next he cursed the offspring of the egg-laying serpent and the birthing and nursing Eve. He cursed Eve to feel pain in bearing her children by Adam, and he cursed Adam to eat only of the tree of knowledge, and to sweat to harvest the grain of the herbs of the field, and render it into bread to feed his family with Eve. Finally, we are cursed with the curse of death, the curse of dust to dust, and of ashes to ashes. Here we see the sevenfold curse penetrating the 3 loops of an Ouroboros, a serpent eating its own tail. Here we see the uncoiled serpent eating its own tail, the zodiac of 12 aeons, interpenetrated as in the last model by the sevenfold mark of Cain. As before, the 12 aeons are believed by Gnostic Kabbalists to each be ruled over by one archon, and that between these archons exist the 7 kamea as powers. Here we see the 4 worlds of Qabalah after the fall. We see Yetzirah now separating Bariah, paradise, from Messiah, in the 7 acts of creation. Yetzirah is the tree of knowledge, and we, the cursed children of Adam, must ascend this model to re-enter paradise. It is said now the path to paradise is guarded by an angel with a flaming sword. Thus the tree of life is now alike a flaming sword. Here we see the Sephirot striking like lightning down from the cloud of Bariah. We see Adam, fallen downward through Asaya, must reascend the tree of knowledge to reacquire the tree of life's forbidden fruit. This is the Kabbalistic process called recapitulation, or recommunion, the reuniting of King God with the crown of your own mind. At last we find the world or dimension of things now, following the fall. The tree of knowledge bearing the fruit of life is full grown. The 7 kamea are fully aligned. The meaning of the fruit of life can now be known. The Gnostic aeons are turning, and the time of Qabalah is approaching us all. First, we turn our attention to the tree of knowledge, recombined with the tree of life. Here, at last, we see the meaning of the 7 as the chakras on the central pillar, and the meaning of the 10 as the 8 double trigrams of I Ching, as well as Yin and Yang. 22 paths connect the 10, and 12 connect the 7. There are a total of 72 unique traits on this diagram. 10 plus 22 of the Tree of Knowledge equals 32, and 7 plus 12 of the Tree of Life, which combine to form his 50 names besides Marduk. Thus, these 50 combined with the 22 tarot trumps, or Hebrew letters, total 72. This is the model of the 7 Kamea assembled. The 7 Kamea, considered equivalent to the sevenfold curse of Cain, the 7 powers of the Archons, the 7 Olympic planetary dignities, and the 7 chakras, were originally 7 talismans made of magic number squares. These squares, the Kamea, can then be folded up around a Pythagorean theorem triangle to form this flower-like shape. Here we see the Tree of Life's fruit schematically exploded, as we had seen before with the fruit of the Tree of Knowledge eaten by Eve. The larger green circle signifies the standard zodiac, while the smaller blue torus signifies the 3-looped version of the zodiac, seen from the side. The red triangles represent the sevenfold Olympic Kamea as trajectories. This is a depiction of the usual form of a zodiac, containing the usual expression of the planets, not as bars across the circle, but as a star of 7 points within a circle of 12. This image shows us in a single simple model the entirety of all that has thus far been described. Its real meaning, however, is understood only by a few, who are the true Gnostics. Lastly, we see this depiction of the alignment of the 7 planets on May 5th, 2000 AD, and the alignment of the Earth, Moon, Sun, and galactic core on December 21, 2012 AD. We can now, if we should so like to, and also should we choose to do so, see the similarities of this model to the 4 worlds of Qabalah. Qabalah, Session 4. Albert Einstein disagreed with Niels Bohr by saying that God does not roll dice, and yet space has 3 dimensions. Each dimension has 2 directions, such that there are, in fact, 6 possible directions in all space. This is equivalent to the 6 sides of a cubic dice. Thus, Einstein disagreed with Bohr on the nature and construction of the universe. He may have been implying that space, because it has a 4th single direction of time, is not shaped exactly like a 6-sided dice. The ancients were familiar with the 6-sided cube, and they invented the dice based on those principles. While many moderns believe that the original invention of dice was to further a game of chance, luck, in truth, dice were a divinatory mechanism. That is, a device for rendering predictions by the same grand design that formed and created, made and shaped the universe in 3 dimensions with 6 possible directions. These manifested as the 6 fundamental questions of logical reasoning.
Who, what, when, where, why, and how.
Since their origin, the exact order of these in order to produce a deduction or induction of logical reasoning, i.e. an answer, has been lost. However, the questions known now are the same as those known to the ancients and can be graphed, plotted into the 6 sides of the 3-dimensional cube. This configuration is called a logic cube, and it represents space, the static 3 dimensions, frozen in the exact moment now. However, what is sacred is sacred, and what is profane is profane. Therefore, the single cube representing space, frozen in the moment of now, time, excludes the arrow of entropy that passes through all things, causing change and energy to be formed as matter breaks down. Thus, while this moment, the single cube, is a sacred moment, event, and shape, it is not the single cube which is known to the profane. It is the dice, plural. Dice like these poker dice, which are labeled with the upper trump royal suits of a regular deck of cards.
Thus 9, 10, Jack, Queen, King, and Ace.
Just as the 6 fundamental questions of reasoning represent the single moment of now, and in the same way that only poker dice and not regular pipped dice can represent the dual nature of a single cube over time, representing the change, flux, the rolling of the dice as it breaks its matter down into energy and becomes something new. Thus, when we take 2 poker dice and label them with these esoteric and astrological, planetary and elemental symbols,
shown here the 12 signs of the zodiac and 7 planets of antiquity,
thus representing time, depicted on the pair of cubes, we arrive at this model. Here you can see that each edge of the dual cube has a symbol from astrology attached to it, but that each face or side of this dual cube remains labeled with one aspect of the dual nature of the poker dice. It is possible to depict in a model in 3 dimensions the combination of the logic cube and the dual nature of the poker dice, expressed as the double cube of the Qabalah. When These two traits, the logic dice and the dual nature of the poker dice Qabalah, are combined. They give us the actual shape of the Tree of Life. The arrangement of the Tree of Life is such that there are 10 faces showing on the double cube, symbolizing the 10 Sephiroth emanations of Qabalah. The 22 paths are contained in 3 horizontal planes. The 7 planets are labeled vertically, while the 12 astrological signs of the zodiac are labeled horizontally around the double cube. And here we see that because the double cube is superimposed with the logic cube's attributes, when represents Kether, as well as the lower half of the Abyss Death, while Y represents Malkuth and the upper half of the Abyss Death. And so when and Y appear only once each, while the rest appear twice. And here we see the 2 cubes of Qabalah represented in 3 separate forms. On the right we see the proper Tree of Life model of Qabalah. In the middle we see the combination of the attributes of the zodiac and the planets with the poker dice sides. And on the left we see the regular poker dice arranged in the same placement as the other 2 models. Thus, these 3 double cubes all represent the Tree of Life. A cube over time. Qabalah, Session 5. In this final session, let us begin by looking at Qabalah, not as in Session 1, as an 8-sided tesseract or cube over time, but as a 2-dimensional shadow of the same shape on a Euclidean Cartesian plane space. We see the universe of space now as a series of rippling arcs, and the multiversal force of time we see as the square of that circle, that is, having the same area, but exceeding its circumference in exactly 4 corners. The 4 concentric rings symbolize the Kabbalistic 4 worlds, or the elemental traits and qualities that apply to each of the cosmological forces of our universe in the order in which they formed 1 Planck time following the Big Bang. Immediately we see that the Tree of Life of Qabalah takes a form of a spiral shape to connect the dots of where these circles and squares overlap. This spiral revolves around one way above, called phi, i.e. a Fibonacci spiral, and the opposite way below, called pi, i.e. a spiral mirabilis. The 10 Sephiroth attributes are given titles derived from Timothy Leary's interpretation of the 3 Bardo total of the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Here we find that Kether and Chakma symbolize the primary and secondary clear light respectively, but that the 7 Sephiroth below these twin supernals, from Binah down to Yesod, are the realms between the Eightfold Path and the 6 Lokas, and thus belong collectively to the second realm of the Buddhist afterlife, the Chonyid Bardo. Lastly, Malkuth Shekinah is symbolized by the 4 elements surrounding a human figure, itself representing the 5th element of spirit. This, Leary, corresponded to the Sidpa Bardo. Next, to study the attributes of the squared circle, flat plane model of Qabalah,
We examine each corner and then rotate the entire shape around its central circle. Once we have rotated the Tree of Life spiral shadow of the phi to pi ratio around full circle, we come to the Tree of Death, upside down from the Tree of Life. The Tree of Life's 10 Sephiroth emanations are represented on the Tree of Death as the taking back of 10 blessings that shattered the Qliphoth shells. Here these sins are listed as the 10 Commandments. Then, returning the model to the upright position, we find that it is the stirring of this spiral permeating upward into, then downward through, the space-time continuum represented as the square circle that causes the differentiation of the 4 Kabbalistical elemental worlds. Such is the penetrating gaze of the all-seeing eye of the Creator, Maker, Shaper, and Former of all so minute that it can search down all the way from around the outskirts of time itself and look long into our soul. Before we leave this geometrical model, though, let us pause briefly to consider some of the other symbols on it. Between the Egyptian hieroglyph for the Ka, representing the body on the far left, and Malkuth in the center, along the 8th spoke on the horizon, measures exponential distances from Earth in light years. Between the Egyptian hieroglyphic for the Ka, aura or energy double on the far right, and Malkuth in the center measure 4 states of consciousness expressed by the Vedic Hindu Buddhist terms for various levels of trance-meditative mind state. Finally, let us only briefly consider the shape this squared circle form of Qabalah-A would take in 3 space, and following this the shape again extended into 4 space over 3 space, the sacred version of the Golden Dawn Tree of Life known to the profane.